to the Bullcast Podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me is my super awesome co-host, Court Winsett.
Hello.
And there's the opening bell. So we've started a new series last week. We were talking about stocks, and this time we're going to talk about bonds. Bonds. Explain bonds. Yes, we are doing 007. What do you think about that? It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be a blast. I mean, it's amazing. We just stumbled on this. As a matter of fact, it was our producer, our amazing producer, who noticed and pointed out to us that we were doing an episode about bonds. And that episode was episode 7, so it just naturally fit that it's 007 bonds. Explain bonds.
Yes.
Because we are doing all bond all the time, basically bondsy bondness going into your ears for the next half hour or so, our top 5 will be James Bond related. We couldn't decide what we wanted to do as our top 5.
This was almost a fight trying to decide what to be.
Yeah. We initially talked about doing Bond girls, but I was like, no, I'm not going to be,
because there's so many beautiful ladies that have been Bond girls.
I'm not going to be nailed down on that one. So I just want to do the top 5 Bond movies. But Katie, you're going to do top 5 Bond songs.
Yes.
So we're actually going to do we're doing our top 5 this week is top 5 Bond things. I'm doing movies, Katie's doing songs. So Katie, what's your top 5
Bond songs? So we're so excited about this episode. And of course, this is purely fun. Then we'll get into the meat of really about bonds versus stocks and all of that. But if you think back to these James Bond movies, there's always a wonderful theme song that goes with it. And the music videos are incredible. And I think it's almost like you've made it as a star if you've been asked to do a Bond theme song. So I really wanted to kind of highlight some of my favorites. And, I know there's a ton of great ones out there because there's been like 21, 22 James Bond movies out there. So, starting with number 1, You Only Live Twice, Nancy Sinatra. This was a 1967 Sean Connery James Bond. And this was also featured in season 5 of Mad Men, if you're a Mad Men fan. So, you know it's a classic if Mad Men features it too. But so, yes, that was with our Sir Sean Connery as James Bond. Number 2 would be Goldfinger with Shirley Bassey. 1964, another Sean Connery. But actually, Shirley has done 3 songs for James Bond movies. She is the only artist to ever do multiple James Bond theme songs.
Really?
Yes, so she did Diamonds Are Forever in 1971 and then Moonraker in 1979.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. Number 3, kind of recent, Daniel Craig won. This would be Skyfall by Adele, 2012.
Oh, you have a thing for Adele?
I think she's great. I think she's got a great voice. So it was hard to pick which one of the Daniel Craig movies to do a song from. But
did you try and get one song from each of the actors?
I tried, but Sean Connery's just got a special place in my heart. I had to do 2.
I got you.
Number 4, Miss Tina Turner with Golden Eye, 1995. Pierce Brosnan. Great movie, great song. You can't go wrong with Tina.
Also a great video game.
Oh,
GoldenEye was a classic Nintendo video game.
I even remember playing that.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, but really number 1 in my heart, Paul McCartney, Live and Let Die.
Of course.
1973, Roger Moore as James Bond. I mean, this is the ultimate, yes, it just gets your heart pumping. Oh, it's awesome.
I do. I have to point out to you, first of all, any top song list of James Bond that doesn't include Live and Let Die, I really seriously have to question. But then also you said number 5, number 1 in my heart. Katie, this is your list, so you can rank them however you want.
Save the best for last.
Oh, I got you.
Because I really wanted to, if you start out with Live and Let Die, then everyone's singing in their head. No one's listening to 2, 3, and 4. Exactly. But yes, so that was mine. I do have to throw out Madonna, Die Another Day. I was obsessed with that when I was younger, and now I listen to it, I'm like, oh, okay, well, love you, Madonna, but it was definitely hit for the 2000 era.
I got you. Well,
so let's find out about the movies, Court. What'd you think?
Well, okay, so my top 5 Top 5 Bond movies. I want to give this disclaimer because I did, as usual, I went out onto the interwebs and did a little looking around to see what other people thought. And I find that I am in contrast to many. So I want to preface this by saying this is not a definitive list of the best Bond movies. This is a definitive list of my favorite Bond movies. So number 1, that being my favoritist, is Skyfall. I absolutely loved this movie. I mean, for so many reasons. I mean, I loved the villain. I loved it. I can't even. There were so many twists. It wrapped up just sort of this new and compelling origin story for Bond in a nice little bow. It was like this 3-movie origin story that I just thought was fantastic. The final scene at Skyfall. Who knew that Skyfall was the name of his heritage house? I had no idea.
Spoiler.
Oh. Okay, spoiler lols. If you haven't seen Skyfall by now, go see it. Number 2 is Casino Royale, and I am talking about the Daniel Craig Casino Royale. I'm not referring back to the comedy masterpiece with Inspector Clouseau. This movie was amazing. It was a great reboot for Bond. I like the way they took him back to really sort of a basic sort of rough. This was Daniel Craig kind of. You know, this was ugly Bond, and it was kind of
wasn't the pretty boy. Pierce.
Yeah, it was and not that Daniel Craig is ugly. I don't mean to say that, but it was gritty is the word I'm looking for. You had just had this Pierce Brosnan movie that was Bond as teched out as he could possibly be, and Pierce Brosnan is so suave and was so very much. And then the next movie, your opening sequence for Bond is just this Bond crashing through walls and getting just I liked the way that it kind of twisted things around on me, and it made
didn't try and make Daniel Craig be the same as Pierce. It changed it up a little bit.
Yeah. And but it did end up making me very happy. And like I said, to be the opening trilogy for Craig to be bookended by Casino Royale at the start and Skyfall at the end, I think of those 3 movies as very much like the Bond story, and they're just great. They will always be tops in my book. Okay, so I'm not an idiot. Daniel Craig has actually got 4 movies that have been released, and a 5th is on the way sometime. Yeah, No Time to Die, I think, is coming out soon. So, in the next month or year or 2 years or something. Inspector, of course he did. Those movies exist in his world, but really what I mean when I say the first 3 sort of establish his Bond, and that is an origin story over the course of 3 movies. And then, of course, he could just keep making the Bond movies, but it looks like he's taking the out after number 5. My third favorite Bond movie is Goldfinger, and I've got 1 word for you or 2 words, depending on how you want to spell it. But Odd Job, that dude's hat. I loved that hat, and man, I wanted an Odd Job hat for my entire childhood. It was so cool. Number 4, I love Pierce Brosnan's Tomorrow Never Dies, and it's not one that comes up a lot on lists. Usually people say GoldenEye as their favorite Pierce Brosnan movie. I like Tomorrow Never Dies. I really like Michelle Yeoh's character in Tomorrow Never Dies, and she plays a Chinese agent, basically his Chinese counterpart. And I loved their interactions together. She's a great action star, so she was in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh yeah.
So she's amazing in that movie, and I loved their dynamic together. And then my number 5 is Moonraker, and that's because that is. In 1979, I think that is the first Bond movie that I saw in theaters as a child. So,
oh, how cool!
Okay, so Moonraker is kind of my sentimental favorite. Okay, well, that's our list, folks. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.
No. We've got to tell them about Bonds.
We have to actually do the part about Bonds.
Yes.
Bonds, not Bond. Okay, so our topic this week is Bonds. Katie?
Yeah, so
what?
Last time we talked about stocks and,
Right.
the different things about them going public and all of that.
Yeah. Why does a company go public? They do it either because the person who owns it wants to cash out, or
They want to cash out, or they need money.
the company needs money.
Yeah. So then it kind of goes hand in hand when you're talking about what we're talking about now, which is bonds. The best way for you to visualize a bond, IOU.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of an IOU?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
You owe me.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So if you want to raise money, and if a company wants to raise money and they don't want to sell stock or issue shares of stock, then they could get a loan from a bank, or they could instead issue bonds.
Yeah.
And
Which, I mean, that makes sense if you think about it. If, going back to our last episode, if Court and I didn't want to open ourselves up to have additional owners, but we needed money to pay for our plant, our sewing machines, our, polar bear models, whatever it may be, that we could then issue bonds. And that's, where you could invest with us with the bond, and we owe you then.
yeah, I feel like we're going to be saying bond so much, and every time I want to, I don't know.
So are you James Bond and I'm Moneypenny?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like it.
That's fantastic. Cameron can be our, I guess, maybe
Q.
Q. Yeah, I was thinking
yeah, Q.
he's our Q.
Yep. But so, like you said, you think about it. If you've got this company, you go to your bank first and try and get them to give you money. But a lot of times, companies have it where the banks are like, no, I've loaned you enough money. And that's where they need to branch out and issue these bonds to try and raise more money. But they don't want to go the stock route because they don't want to give up ownership.
Right. So everybody, well, I mean, I guess not everybody, but a lot of people are going to be very familiar with the idea of personally going to a bank and asking the bank for money, either to buy a house or buy a car or buy a polar bear. The polar bear thing didn't work out, but I mean, I'm just saying. But you go to the bank, you ask the bank for money. The bank says, yes, we'll loan you this money. We'll loan you however much money to buy your house, $100,000 to buy your house. Can you even get a house for $100,000 anymore? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you can, but it seems like house prices are going up. Anyway, let's say the bank agrees to loan you $100,000 to buy a house. They're going to want you to pay that $100,000 back over somewhere between 15 and 30 years. And they're also going to want you to pay some interest, right? On that loan. Okay. And so interest is a percentage of the amount that they loaned you that you pay to them on a monthly basis until you've paid off the full amount of what they loaned you.
Yeah, so you think about where you're going with this. You think about your mortgage statement.
Right.
And so you agree with the original loan amount, and then you'll sit there and you'll have principal and interest, which I know are jargon.
Yeah.
But that's what, principal is how much you're paying to go towards that deduction of how much you owe. So if you owe $100,000, then you're saying, $500 is going towards deducting that debt.
Yeah, $500 is getting knocked off the $100,000.
Exactly. That's your principal. And then
Right.
the interest is what you're having to then pay the bank for letting you borrow this money.
Right.
So, I mean, it's even as simple as you think about if you were, I don't know if anybody still does this anymore. If you loan a family member money, then a lot of times it'll be like, okay, here's $100 that I'm loaning you. And it's the whole joke of, oh yeah, if you don't get it back to me in, 2 weeks, there's going to be interest there.
Yeah. So if you think of it like that, think of debt in those terms. With a bond, the people, you, our beloved listener, you are effectively put in the position of the bank. With a bond, you're the one that is loaning money to a company.
Yeah. So I'm Moneypenny, James Bond, you're coming to me.
Right.
And you've got this mission you want to go on, but you need money to go on this mission. So you're talking to me, and I'm your bank, and I'm like, well, okay, let's talk about that.
Yes. And
Let's figure out how much, interest, and what are we going to do with that?
right. So what you can do is think about it like this. The company could go to a bank just like you or I could go to a bank. For any number of reasons they may choose not to. It may be because they already owe the bank money. It may be because they want a little bit more control over the way they're paying the money back. And a bond can offer a company sort of a flexibility on payment of their loan that the bank can't necessarily offer. And so they're going to decide to issue bonds. And, that effectively issue bonds means, okay, we need to borrow a certain amount of money. How much do we need to borrow? Mm-hmm. And you say it's $1 million.
Okay.
So, we need $1 million. We're going to issue a bond. We're going to do a bond issue to raise that $1 million. We're going to sell people $1,000 bonds, and it would take 1,000 bonds to make that $1 million.
So there's 1,000 people that would accept to do this $1,000 bond to help out with the overall goal.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Okay.
So you're basically taking that $1 million, cutting it up into slices, and selling it $1,000 or selling a bond $1,000 at a time. But really, you're not selling anything. The company isn't really selling the bonds. Mm-hmm. What they're really doing is they're borrowing money from
they're issuing out IOUs.
Yeah. And then they're basically saying to the investor, okay, if you will loan us this $1,000, then we will pay you interest on that $1,000, X amount of interest on that $1,000 for X amount of years. Mm-hmm. And you, the investor, are saying, okay, I will loan you this $1,000 and accept the X amount of interest for a certain amount of years. And then at the end of that certain number of years, I want my $1,000 back. And the company agrees. Yes, that is what we will do. We will give you interest for 10 years, say, just to throw a number out there. We will give you interest for 10 years on the $1,000 that you loaned us. And at the end of that 10 years, we will pay you back the money that you loaned us. It's really pretty much that simple.
Okay. I give you $1,000. Mm-hmm. And so, you've set the interest rate with me that you're going to pay me $50 a year for 10 years?
Sure. I mean, well, that's going to depend on what interest rate I issue the bond for. But I mean, I'm going to give you a promise. And I mean, there's always a chance that a company may go back on their promise. Mm-hmm. But I am going to.
It's not like a pinky promise. Yeah, it's locked in.
I'm gonna. Yeah, we're not doing like Harry Potter. What is the
little like spell where they like lock it in,
the binding promise? Yeah, I can't. We're not doing that. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get your $1,000 back. We'll talk about that a little later when we talk about the risk of buying a bond as an investment. But we're going to promise that we're going to do everything in our power to give you that $1,000 back in 10 years. And really, how likely it is that we will actually pay you back that $1,000 is going to help determine what the interest rate is that we will pay you over the course of that 10 years. Because how you as Katie, you just recently, you don't mind if I say that you just recently purchased a house.
Yes.
Okay. And so you went through the whole loan process. And one of the things they do when they're deciding whether or not to give you a mortgage is they check your credit rating, right? Your credit score.
Yeah. They want to make sure that, I'm going to be good for it. Right. I'm going to do what I need to do to pay it.
So everybody, all people have, you have to build credit. One of the first things that you tell a teenager when they're coming out of school and going into college and coming out of college and going into life is you got to build up your credit score. So everybody builds up a credit score. We have agencies that report our credit scores to people who are thinking about loaning us money. Agencies like Experian, they were in the news recently because they had a big data breach. I don't know if you, do you remember that at all? Yeah. Experian, TransUnion, these are some of the companies that keep track of our personal credit scores. And if a bank or a car dealership reaches out and says, hey, we need to know if we should loan this person this amount of money for 5 years. What is their credit score? Experian will come back and go, oh, well, his credit score is 750. He's fine to loan money. His credit score is 600. You probably want to either not loan him the money or charge him a really high interest rate.
Yeah.
Companies have the same sort of credit score, except for them, it comes in the form of a bond rating. And there are companies out there, just like Experian and TransUnion, there are companies out there that are there to issue bond ratings for the different companies and governments and so forth that want to issue bonds.
So that's how you could figure out as the investor is this a company that I want to, believe in, that I want to accept this IOU from, and accept this bond?
Right. And that bond rating is going to do two things. It's going to tell you how likely it is that you're going to get that $1,000 back. Mm-hmm. And then also it will tell you, it affects what interest whoever is getting the loan from you, whoever is issuing the bond, it's gonna establish what interest they're gonna have to pay to be able to sell these bonds to people.
Yeah.
Because if you're a business with a low bond score, a low credit score, then you're gonna issue bonds, but you're gonna have to pay way more interest to entice people to buy your bonds than someone who has a really high bond score. Now, I said people get credit ratings. They get a credit score of like a 700 or a 750 or 800 or a 600, whatever. Companies don't have numerical scores. They have
letter scores.
They have
so going back to elementary school.
Yeah.
I guess high school too.
High school
get
too,
letter score.
Sure. But they get letter grades. The letter grading system is a little bit different than.
It's a little bit different. So it's kind of, you look at, the best of the best is the AAA ones. Mm-hmm. And so, that's that tried and true. You feel pretty confident that like you doing a bond with this company, you're going to get that promise is going to follow through. Right. It's going to be great. And then it downgrades from there. The AA, A, triple B is kind of where you're like, whoop, okay, that triple B is still okay. But when you get below that, that's when you call junk bonds, which junk bonds is jargon, but junk pretty much, think about it. What is junk? Junk is, you don't want junk. So junk is your, crazy family member that keeps calling you because they're down on their luck again and want more money. You don't loan that person money because it's a never-ending cycle.
Well,
they're just going to keep coming back and wanting more, and they're never going to pay you back.
You might in the bond
world. You might.
You would loan the money. You're just going to ask for them to pay you a lot more interest than you would a AAA company.
Yeah, you want them to pay more interest because it's kind of one of those like, oh no, you don't exactly have the best letter grade. Why don't you give me a little bit more because I'm taking a chance on you?
Yeah.
And so you need to give me a little kickback with this.
Yeah. Some of these companies, they've gotten a note home from teacher that said they've been a bad boy.
Yes, exactly. And that's companies have to pride themselves and they have to work to get these grades.
Well, yeah, not only do they have to work to get them, but then on top of that, they have to pay for their score. So the agencies that do bond ratings are you may have heard of them. They're agencies like Moody's. You may have heard someone refer to Moody's, or you may have heard someone refer to Standard and Poor's. Mm-hmm. These are the people that give the companies their bond ratings, but they don't just do it for charity. They charge to give out to rate a particular company, to rate a bond.
Of course, our polar bear company would definitely be a AAA.
Absolutely.
100%. Fabulous.
Yeah, no question about it.
But so it's also, companies have the option. I know we talked about the difference of companies picking between doing stocks or bonds, but we do want to address that there are companies that will do both.
Sure.
There will be companies that will issue stocks and will issue bonds.
Yeah.
And so don't let that get in the way when you're looking at something like, oh, they're just a bond company or just a stock company.
Right. Okay. So that makes sense. Okay. So a bond is basically something that a company is giving you that is an IOU. You're saying, here's $1,000. Your company is a AA rating, so you're going to pay me this much interest on this $1,000 that I've loaned you, and there you go. That's a bond. That's how bonds work. Why would someone buy a bond?
Why would someone? And that's what we want to talk about, is that where stocks are kind of you're investing in it. It's kind of for growth opportunity to see how high that stock will go. Bonds are something to think about, like income, because when you are loaning this money, you're setting it up where you're hopefully going to get that constant income coming in of that interest being paid back to you.
Right.
But in addition to income, it's also preserving capital. Capital being your money. So I know I was a jargon. Yeah. I know. I saw you eyeing me across the table. But
kind of like earlier we were talking about the principle of the loan is the $1,000.
Yes.
For you, that $1,000 is capital that you want to
money.
You want to get back. So it's money that you want to get back at the end of a certain period of time.
Yeah, so then you kind of just looking at, one to the other. Stocks is growth. Bond is holding on, preserving. Preserving jams, preserving your money.
Right.
But then you're also going to get an income. You're going to get that, hopefully, if you pick that good rating, you're going to get that income coming in from those interest, coupons.
Yes, the interest. Okay, so
that was a jargon.
It was, but we did it on purpose. We did it on purpose.
Yes, this is not like extreme couponer where you got to have your notebook with your little coupons you cut out from the magazines. This is something that is attached to the bonds.
Right, and so a coupon, the coupon rate is the interest rate, and when you get a payment, it's a payment from a coupon. The reason they call it that is because you literally used to have, just like you used to have stock certificates, you used to have bond certificates with physical little pieces of coupon on them, and you would tear off a coupon for your next yearly payment and go take it to the company and say, here's my coupon, pay me my interest, and the company would say, okay, here.
Well, and it's kind of like, I don't know why I just visualize this, but you think about when you go to the arcade as a kid and you had little red tickets,
sure,
and that's what you would you would have to take that there to get your prize.
Yeah, you would
and
have
if
to
you
take
lost
like
the tickets, then
of them.
Well, yeah, but if you lost your ticket, the little teenager behind the counter was like, sorry, not my problem. It's kind of how it used to be with the bonds. If you lost those coupons, sorry, if they got damaged, sorry.
Yeah, fortunately.
No, it's not anymore.
Fortunately, we've moved on from that. So the only thing that remains from that era of physical paper coupons that you would tear off and take in is the fact that people still call it the coupon rate. But just it's a loan. You're getting your interest payment. Your interest payment is going to be the $50 or the $40 per year or $10 per year, whatever, based on the interest rate that you loaned the money for. That's the payment that you're going to get on a yearly basis. So that's what gives you your income stream. And then at the end, hopefully, the company will pay you back your $1,000. So at the end of the 10 years, you get your $1,000 back.
Well, and so just with stocks, bonds are not for everyone. You've got to look at overall your goals and what you're trying to accomplish with your money. And so that's one of those that if you are needing income and you're wanting to just preserve your capital, then, this is something to look into. But as always, we have to recommend you do talk to a financial advisor and kind of see what your long-term objectives are and what's the best fit for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of times you will hear advisors talk about, well, you maybe you're looking to retire and you want some revenue in addition to your pension or your Social Security or whatever you saved up in your 401k. And so bonds can be a sort of investor's income source. They can provide another income stream, those payments.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tax consideration when you're talking about bonds, and that's because there is several different kinds of bonds out there.
Yeah.
And we've got
well, first, did we say at the I hope to goodness that we said at the front end, but if we didn't, we're gonna say it now. There are several different types of organizations that can issue bonds. It's not just companies now. We're talking about also companies, governments issue bonds, whether it's the federal government or cities or states.
Agencies.
Government agencies can issue bonds. So the tax considerations of a bond can definitely come into play because interest is an income. So you would normally be taxed on interest income that you make over the course of a year. But with certain bonds, you can buy certain bonds and the income that you get from that bond, that interest payment that you're receiving on a yearly basis, is not treated as income and you do not have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah, and I mean that's a whole complicated situation because bonds can be complicated, but that's where if you're interested in doing them, you talk to someone like, Pickler Wealth Advisors, and we can go through it with you and figure out what is the best option for you. But the court mentioned we've got, corporate bonds, which is issued by a company. Yeah. And then you've got municipal bonds, or a lot of times they're called Muni bonds. And, Muni bonds are your state and your municipality. So you think about it like the city you live in, the state you live in, they could be issuing bonds. Then you've got the government bonds, which are like the U.S. Treasury and off of, the U.S. Treasury debt.
Yeah. Whenever you hear people talking about the federal debt, what they're talking about is the federal government sells, treasury bonds or sells. I mean, I keep saying sells, but because you do think of it as like you're purchasing a bond, but really the government is selling these, quote unquote, selling these treasury bonds. They're borrowing money from their citizens that they will hopefully pay back. But that's when you hear about government debt, that's where their debt is coming from.
And I want to kind of bounce back the muni bonds. So what was cool when we were researching this is if you're in, a city and your city decides to build a football stadium or a baseball stadium, you could actually join in on helping to get one of the bonds that helps build your next NFL stadium or your next baseball stadium in that city, because they'll issue bonds out there. And so, I mean, that's kind of a fun factor of it's like, oh, I helped just build the next Dallas Cowboy football stadium. You will learn I'm a big Cowboys fan. Or whoever your team is, insert NFL team here.
Right. Yes.
But they do issue those, and it's different things of, I think a lot of times we think of with stocks and bonds, it's these big companies, but a lot of times it can be something right in your backyard. It can be helping to build a stadium or something like that. And so that's kind of a cool factor of you can really make a difference in your local municipality.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's makes your investment a little bit more personal. It's kind of like when we talked about buying stocks. A lot of people do start off when they first start purchasing stocks. They start off by purchasing stocks in the companies that they are familiar with, that they like. Well, you could buy a bond for your city.
We built this city. We built this city on muni bonds.
Yes,
come on.
We did build the city. At least parts of the city we built on muni bonds.
Muni bonds.
Let's sum up real quick. I know I always do this. I'm like, let's sum up, and then we go straight into bullseye, which is where we sum up. But I just want to make sure that we hit all of the points, because we talked about corporations. We talked about muni bonds. That's the state and municipalities. We talked about federal bonds, treasury bonds. There's also agency bonds. Really, we're kind of, I have a tendency, and Katie, you usually call me on this. I have a tendency to get in the weeds, and we're, going
Court's
deep.
in session.
Yeah. We're going deep into the weeds here. So I'm gonna back up and say, just, when you talk about bonds, you'll hear a lot about companies issuing bonds. You'll hear a lot of people talk about muni bonds, and then of course the federal bonds. There is this other thing called agency bonds that exists. That's basically when government agencies like Fannie Mae issues a bond.
Yep.
That's all I'm going to say about it.
That's all you're going to say. Life's like a box of chocolates.
Life's like a box of chocolates.
You never know what you're going to get unless it's a bond and you know those credit ratings. And then you know that it's, you look at their letter.
Way to bring it back round.
Oh, yeah. I'm keeping you on task, Court.
Okay.
I know we're about to get the bullseye, but I really just want everyone to understand. Think of bonds like an IOU, and that you are acting as the bank, that a company, a city, a state, an agency has realized that they need more money. And so they've decided to say, hey, help us out, invest in us, take a bond, and we'll pay you guys. Remember, those junk bonds are the ones that are going to probably pay a little bit more interest, but they're going to be a little bit more risky. But bonds are complicated.
Or a lot more risky, yeah.
This was really just the kind of the basic of it all, and that it's something that if you are interested in bonds, it's looking at your objectives and figuring out, does income and preserving your money.
Do bonds make sense for me?
Does it make sense?
Do bonds make sense for me? And I will tell you that James Bond makes sense for me. But bonds, I don't know. You come talk. We tell you.
Okay, let's get into bullseye.
As I am wont to do, why don't we sum this mother up? Let's... Y'all should see the look on Katie's face. I got a real... She's like, what?
I think he may have been having some martinis. Of course, shaken, not stirred.
Yeah, maybe I've had a few too many martinis. No, let's sum up for the listeners. Our bullseye. What is your bullseye?
Bullseye, bonds, IOUs. Something for you to get invested in if you want to have that income coming in. And it's something that you can look at being involved with local and state and kind of have that cool factor of helping build a stadium or something like that.
You've gotten so good at your bullseyes, Katie, that I don't even really feel like I need to give a bullseye. But just so we...
Maybe we'll vote you off the island next time.
Just so we stick to form, I'll tell you my bullseye is... let's sum up the last 2 episodes. Stocks are buying an ownership share in a company. Bonds are giving a loan to a company. Stocks are more of a growth investment. Bonds are more of an income investment. And
preservation.
Yeah. And next week we're going to talk about some cash or maybe some hard assets. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're going to surprise you. But remember, this investment series is broken down into cash, hard assets, stocks, and bonds. And we've given you the stocks and bonds. So all we got left is cash and hard assets.
And again, this is just the baseline. So if you want to find out more information, then we'd love to hear from you and help you find out a little bit, get more into the weeds with Court on some of these topics.
Boy, I could get into the weeds if you want to. Whoops. Katie, that's the closing bell. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've made it this far, then you have learned everything that you're going to learn today, and the rest is just gravy. Why don't you find out more about me and Katie by going to our website at bullcastpodcast.com. You can send us a question, you can leave us a comment, or you can just read all about us. You can also reach out to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @bullcastpodcast. Doy. That's pretty simple. Follow us on Instagram. That handle is also bullcastpodcast. And finally, if you'd like to find out more about me and Katie and the team that we work with, the amazing team that we work with, you can look up Cameron if you want to. He's on the website as well. Find out about our boss and the company where we work, then you can go to picklerwealthadvisors.com. That's advisors with an O. That should give you plenty to do until next time. So for now, I'm Court.
I'm Katie.
And that is all, folks.